Did you ever wonder what modern-day left-wing women feminists who like to complain about women being oppressed and subjugated by an evil patriarchy, that's you, gentlemen, what do they have to say about the incredible dominance in the leadership of the Tea Party of women? I haven't heard Now issue a release on that. Let me ask you first, how many of you have been involved in one way or another, big or small, with the Tea Party? I thought so. What a great group of people. Well, we're going to have a little discussion here about it. I have to tell you, sadly, that our second speaker on this, Dawn Wildman, who's out of San Diego, has fallen very ill. Her husband said she just couldn't make it. So we're going to have a wonderful discussion, just a smaller group here. But think about it. The Tea Party movement is the largest spontaneous grassroots movement our nation has ever seen. And it's right now, and it's right here. It's spontaneous in that it truly generated from the grassroots up. No group set out to plan events or to bus people. And it's just truly remarkable when you stop and look and think about it and see what's happened in the past couple of years with this spontaneous movement. I think probably the impetus for the movement was, there's many reasons, but two primary individuals. First, Sarah Palin, and second, Barack Obama. Palin, the massive rallies we saw Palin draw in 2008, while her running mate, Senator McCain, could hardly summon hundreds. And her ability to say what the country was feeling, that unique ability to connect with and inspire massive audiences of people in America, kind of like Ronald Reagan did. Obama, Obama, as they say. His profound overreach from the first days of his administration, best example, of course, Obamacare, to allow the federal government to take over the health care of all the American citizens. It's an amazing thing that this movement has risen up over concern about the original intent of the Founding Fathers and deficit spending and the proper role of government. The elites on both sides really still don't get it, I think. They still think, in a general sort of way, that the masses are not really that smart. Despite liberal indoctrination at our schools, on our campuses, in the popular culture, and in the media, the American people still fundamentally believe that their freedom comes from God, not from the government. And they still believe that they are best suited to determine their own life's outcomes, not letting some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. or in a state capital decide their life for them. I mean, let's face it, liberals, you see the talking heads on TV all the time, the liberals, they have utter disdain for the Tea Party movement because it threatens the kind of government control they are just on the cusp of securing. So they deride, and they mock, and they belittle, and they mischaracterize the Tea Party movement, sometimes with the most offensive and disgusting innuendo, and attack its leaders viciously all the time, like Sarah Palin. Conservatives and elected officials will ignore the Tea Party at their peril. This is no time, as President Reagan used to say, for pale pastels. We are destined as a nation for economic ruin if we continue on the current course. You can't print trillions and trillions of new money and not face massive inflation. You can't spend far above what you have and expect that there are not dire consequences. And we really do need to get together and decide on who we want for our bold new leadership in the years ahead. You hear a lot of hand-wringing about, where is the great leader, the one person who's going to get us out of this mess? There's probably not one leader. There's no one who knows this better than we, the people, and that's what the Tea Party is all about. We are the leaders who together are going to get America out of its crisis. And that's the essence of being a conservative, not a liberal, knowing the power and wisdom of the individual. It's a tremendous honor today to have one of the key Tea Party leaders with us today, Keli Carender. She's one of the founders of the Tea Party movement, and I know some of you Seattle people know Kirby Wilbur, who was, he's actually an old friend of mine. I knew Kirby when he was in high school. And of course, he's been a wonderful talk radio show host there, second only to Rush in Seattle for such a long time. And now he's the head of the GOP in Washington State. It sounds like a big Tea Party to me up there, huh? And he told me that Keli sponsored the first modern Tea Party protest in the United States in Seattle, the very first. Today, she serves as national coordinator for the Tea Party Patriots organization, and she is also the national director of outreach and education for State Budget Solutions and Tea Party Sunshine. She focuses her effort on legislative research, government transparency, and advocating for the Healthcare Compact. She co-chairs the Seattle Sons and Daughters of Liberty, an activist coalition in the Seattle area, and writes a blog called Redistributing Knowledge. She received her graduate degree in education at the University of Oxford in Oxford, England. And when she's not fighting for conservative principles, her interests include improv comedy. She's even performed with award-winning improv groups around the country. Please join me in welcoming Keli Carender.
Hello. Hello. Man, Anne is really good. I'm just going to start my little timer here. There we go. So I'll just quickly go over my little story. So Anne talked about being, she used to be a liberal. I've always been conservative. In fact, my sisters, we've all been more conservative than my parents, who are now catching up to us. I'm not saying something because my parents were conservative. So, but I wasn't always outspoken, as I'm sure many people here can attest to the same story, because there are tons of Seattleites here. And there's all the other people from the left coast in California. So, for years, I always knew what I believed, and I always had my convictions. I went to Western Washington University, which is in Bellingham, which is like hippie central, and maybe aside from Evergreen State College, which is communist central. But, I just sort of went about my life. I had my convictions. I voted, things like that, but I never did anything else. I never worked on campaigns or paid attention otherwise, because I really thought all you had to do was vote. That's what I, sort of had been taught. But I had a lot of liberal friends, and doing improv, which is basically theater, you can imagine the bulk of my friends were not just liberal, but they were theater people, very liberal. And so I always just found myself at dinner parties or in conversations where people would attack my beliefs and things that I really thought to be true in very nasty ways, but I didn't have the courage to ever say anything about it, because the typical dinner party would go something like this. You're having a lovely time, and then because everyone assumes that everyone agrees with each other, they start talking about politics, and they start getting nasty about it, and they're laughing because everybody agrees, so it's fine. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I have two choices at this point. I can either say, well, excuse me, actually, this is the truth, or where's your proof of that? Or, to challenge them somehow. But then what happens then is, oh, great, thanks for ruining the dinner party. You had to be difficult, didn't you? And you're going, no, you're the one that brought it up and assumed that everyone thought the same. So that's one choice. Or the other choice was to sit silent and sort of just sit there and take it and suck it up and sort of, and that sort of thing brings a lot of shame, because I know there's nothing wrong with my viewpoints, and I know that there's nothing to be ashamed of, but I'd walk away going, why couldn't I just stand up for myself? And thanks to a man named Barack Obama, I couldn't hold it in any longer. So during the campaign in 2008, I started by leaving slightly challenging articles, links on Facebook. Really mild ones. Nothing heavy hitting, just a little challenge here and there, just to sort of see if I could provoke some people. And then that eventually snowballed into today, where it's 24/7 and I'm obsessed, and I go trolling on Facebook for my liberal friends. And I post the most provocative, outrageous things I can possibly find, because I know that I can get some of them to comment on it. But I was upset with President Bush and his last days in office. I was very upset when he talked about abandoning the free market principles to save the free market, because that didn't really make sense to me. And as time wore on and Obama was elected, the stimulus package came about. And at this point, I'm thinking, all right, I'm an American citizen. I've been taught my entire life that I have a voice because I am part of the people. And all I have to do is call my senator and call my representative and let them know how I feel, and everything will be fine. And obviously that wasn't the case. My senators are Maria Cantwell, Patty Murray, and my representative has alternated from where I've moved between Jim McDermott and Norm Dix. And people from Washington understand those names. So I would call, and their mailboxes were full. They didn't even bother to empty them out after a while. I'd email, and I'd get a response back going, "Thanks for your support on this issue." What? I'm not supporting you. Me emailing you is not an indication of me supporting you. It's me expressing my opinion, which is different from what you're doing. And it was so frustrating, and they just didn't care. And it finally hit me at that moment that maybe we don't have as much power as we thought we had. And it was really depressing, like really, really depressing. So I remember sitting on my couch, my laptop on my lap, thinking, I don't know what to do. I felt like I had two choices. It was to curl up and just accept that that's the way things are and that that's the way they had become, or to find a different way to express myself and to express my disagreement with the stimulus. And my fiance at the time, who's now my husband, he was actually the one who forced me to start blogging, because he's a physics guy, and so politics to him is really boring and petty, because he thinks about things like how to extend the life of the universe. I know. And so talking to him nonstop about politics, he was like, "Honey, you really have to, why don't you start a blog?" And he's the one that found the King County Young Republicans, so I finally got to meet some young people that were conservative. So really all of this is his fault. And so I started blogging, and I finally just said, you know what? For the last 8 years, I have seen protest after protest after protest of these lefty freaks, anti-war, anti-capitalism, whatever, pro-amnesty, whatever their issue du jour was. There was giant rallies and protests all the time through Seattle. I thought, all right, if they can do it, I can do it. It can't be that hard, right? So I thought, all right, I was sitting at work, and because at the time I was teaching at a nonprofit, I was teaching adults basic math. And so sitting there and going, all right, you probably have to have a permit, right? So called the police department. They hooked me up with the parks department. He walks me through the process. I pay my $50 because it costs $50 to have a First Amendment event. And, so I got Westlake Park, which is right in downtown Seattle, got the park. And then I thought, what do I do? I didn't know. I mean, how do you have a protest? You know? I was like, okay, maybe people speak at the protest, right? I didn't know anybody. I wasn't involved really in politics. We listened to Kirby Wilbur and everything. And I really thought it was going to be me and my parents and the tiny little amplifier they bought for me, which was really sweet of them. Me and my parents are like this. And so I started planning. I wanted it to be on President's Day, which I believe was February 16th in 2009. And this was probably like February 11th or 12th. And so I thought, okay, I need to spend the rest of my time trying to figure this out. So I called everyone I could think of. Do you guys remember that letter that the 300 economists signed against the stimulus, saying, actually, Mr. President, not all economists agree with you? So I scoured that and did a word search to look for Washington, and I found 2 professors that were in Washington State that had signed that. So I called them. They couldn't make it out because they were on the other side of the state. But, that was the depths that I was plumbing to try to find people. And little by little, I found, a couple people. I had one of my young Republican friends speak. I spoke. And then I called Kirby Wilbur's show. I believe it was the Thursday before, because that was the event was on a Monday. Called him on the Thursday. We had 5 minutes left of his show, and I said, "I'm having a protest on Monday, and I need people to show up." And he was so great. I mean, he didn't think I was a crackpot, and he didn't. He said, "All right, let's." I remember having that anti-Hillary care protest there. Let's do it again. And then he let me come on again on Friday. And so Monday at 11 a.m., we had 120 people show up, which is pretty good for Seattle. When you don't know anyone but liberals. And then, 3 days later was Rick Santelli's rant. The rant turned around the world. And that's when a whole bunch of people got on Twitter and started tweeting to each other and said, yeah, we should have a big national Tea Party. And I think it was Michael Patrick Leahy who started who was one of the starters who started TCOT, which is Top Conservatives on Twitter. He said, let's have a national phone conference. So, and by the way, Tea Party movement could not have happened without free telephone conferencing. That is the big, and the internet. So the few of us that were sort of on Twitter tweeting to each other got on this call, and that's how it started. It was just people who didn't know each other on a phone call, 2 days after Rick Santelli had that rant, planning for February 27th to have our first national rally. And that first national rally on February 27th had over 30,000 people at it, which I know is, a typical, illegal immigration rally or union protest, but it's still a phenomenal thing when you think about how fast that happened and how quickly the message spread. And then, of course, we started planning for the April 15th, the first tax day tea parties, and that's when we had, I believe it was about 1 million people out that day, various cities across the nation. So that's really my story and how I got into it. And a lot of journalists have pointed out that the Tea Party movement is very much made up of women and moms and grandmoms, and not to discount the men, because hey, I'm totally pro man. But it is, and it's very interesting because I know, growing up in this very liberal area, that if you're a woman, well, you're supposed to be liberal, and you're supposed to accept and embrace all these very liberal values and live your lifestyle this way and everything. And so to be able to rise up with other conservative women, I think is so good for this country. And it's so good for, I don't have kids yet, but I'm going to say our daughters. It is. It's good. It's good for the girls coming up through the generations. 55. The last poll that I saw was 55% of our membership at Tea Party Patriots. There's some other umbrella groups, but I know 55% of our membership is female, and 8 out of our 10 staff core support staff members are women. And so people ask the question, why? Why are there so many women involved in this? Again, the last polling data I saw, 56% of women see Obamacare as a failure. And I'm going to go back to that in just a second. 53% view the stimulus as also having been a failure, and TARP and the auto bailouts, majorities see those as failures. Women are typically the sort of caretakers of their house, and a lot of them do the shopping, and they gotta know how to make ends meet, what the budget is, what they've got for their household, things like that. So it sort of makes sense to them to say, well, if I can't spend more than my family's budget for X, Y, and Z, why is it okay for the government to go do the same thing? So I think it's just a really natural fit for women. And I think also we don't want to leave our kids with debt. I mean, isn't one of the great things, again, I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing because I don't have kids, but isn't one of the great things to be able to provide for your children and give them a better start than what you had? Herman Cain talks about that a lot when he speaks. He talks about how his dad had 3 jobs to make sure that his sons had a better start in life than they did. And so I can't imagine wanting to leave your kids then knowing that they're going to have to pay the 80% tax rate to pay for all of this spending that's been going on the last, 80, 100 years. Or 2 years. Maybe if we could just go back to that would be better. And I was interviewed by, have you guys ever heard, you've probably heard of this, Yes Magazine? It's an extremely liberal magazine. Van Jones is on the board, I think, for the magazine. And they happen to work out of Vashon Island. And, or one of the, I think it's Vashon. Anyways, no, Bainbridge. It's Bainbridge. So I was across the water from Seattle. And my little sister's friend from high school, one of her closest friends, works for them now. And when they found out that she knew me, they thought, oh, this will make such a lovely piece. We'll have the 2 of you sit down together and we'll just talk. And, it'll be 2 people about the same generation, about the same age, and just wildly divergent in their views. And so I went over there and we sat down. And she asked us, the editor asked us a question. By the way, I've never seen this article yet, so I don't even know if they published it. So she asked us the question, what are you most fearful of? What scares you the most? And my sister's friend answered this, and you're going to love this, Anne. She said, I have nightmares about the earth burning up. She got really emotional, and she said, I am so frightened that we are just destroying the earth. And she went on, and she was totally freaked out about it and everything. And so then it was my turn, and I said, I'm scared that I'm going to have kids, and I'm going to have to look them in the eye and say, you're not as free as I was. And I keep telling people, when in history have people ever fought and died to become slaves? When did that happen? Because if I'm correct in my knowledge of history and geography and all world current events and things, people usually fight and die so that they can be free. So deliberately moving towards becoming less free, and then having to look my children in the face someday and say, sorry, Big Brother says we have to put the temperature at this, and you're not allowed to study this, and, we all have to think the same way. I'm sort of hoping that if that happens that we can colonize another planet. Maybe my husband can help with that. I'm not sure. And they can have Earth, whatever. And the other thing that really brought it into, real terms for me was I was thinking about starting my own business, just sort of daydreaming, and I was thinking about starting a conservative cafe in Seattle. Don't steal my idea. And because I thought there's a niche market for it, and you could do pretty well probably, and just get bulletproof glass. And cameras everywhere. Oh, and here's the other cool part. My waitresses are going to carry. thinking about this, and it's so not like me to, I understand there are challenges and you gotta work hard to be successful and all that. But I got this sort of like, well, I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what the taxes are going to be like. I don't know what the regulations are going to be like. I don't know if it's going to be worth it. And I went, what did you just think? And that made me so sad, because this is supposed to be the place where the American dream, where you can start with nothing and you can become Mr. Walmart or whatever, whoever you are. And for me to actually have stopped myself from going down, I haven't really gone down that path yet, but to just have that little doubt placed in my mind because of that, I thought was so sad. And we had a legislative action day last year, I think it was, and I went to go see my state legislator. It was with Evergreen Freedom Foundation, and I told her this, and I said, look, this is really upsetting to me that I had this doubt because of what you guys are doing and the kind of mess you're turning everything into. And I said, this isn't right, that I should have these doubts about small business. And the little legislative aide says to me, oh, because the whole time she looked really confused and scared. And then she said, oh, you want to start a small business? Great, I can help you get some women-only grants for that. And and are you a minority by any chance? And there's minority business grants and stuff. And I was like, I don't want the money from you and my neighbors. I will find investors if I need to. Like, she just did, it went completely over her head. She didn't get it at all. But I think that's one of the reasons why women have really gotten into this. Going back to that Obamacare question, is I think that the issue of healthcare, they've always said, the lefties always say that it's healthcare's a women's issue and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? I mean, it is, but not in the sense that they're talking about. The sense that I think it's a woman's issue is in the question of who decides. Do mothers and fathers have the right to decide the healthcare choices for their children, or do they not have that right? Does a government bureaucrat have the right to decide, or do you have the right to decide? And I think that it's just like Sarah Palin said, that whole mama grizzly thing. It's this fiercely protective instinct to say, no, you are not going to put your hands on my child's health care. This is my decision. And nothing illustrates that better than the UK. Sorry. I just saw an article about... it wasn't an article. I was watching, to escape politics, I watch a lot of reality TV. And because, the Real Housewives of New York City and stuff like that. Because I'm pretty sure those people don't vote and never think about politics. So it is the best. It's one of the best escapes ever. But I was watching, the TLC or Lifetime or something like that, and there was a story about this family in England whose daughter was born with primordial dwarfism, and there's a certain kind of primordial dwarfism that is fatal very early on, and the children usually die by about 3 or 4 years old because they have a lot of strokes. Well, they need to do a brain scan to see if she's 3 years old now, their daughter, and they need to do a brain scan to see if she's had any strokes already, or if she's got a lot of clots forming and things like that. But unfortunately, in England, they can't have the brain scan until she gets diagnosed with this specific type of primordial dwarfism. And the testing and the diagnosis process takes, 8 months or something like that. So in the 8 months that they are trying to diagnose her and figure all this out, getting the appointments, getting the lab work done, she could die. Because some bureaucrat somewhere decided that you had to do this first before you could get the brain scan. And I'm sorry, but here in America, if your child might be close to having a stroke that will kill them, you could get a brain scan like that immediately, and it would be your decision, not somebody else's. And so that's why I think that women are all up in this Tea Party business and telling the government to get out of our lives. The Tea Party movement for me has shone a light on conservative women and what conservative women believe and how strong we really are. For too long, I think we really did sort of abandon the world of womanhood to the leftists and to the pseudo-feminists. And I call them pseudo-feminists because any woman who calls herself a feminist and doesn't care about the oppression of women in Islam cannot be a feminist. Okay, so I have to go to a couple of questions now, but I just really quickly, before the questions, I just wanted to mention really quickly what Tea Party Patriots is up to. So we're working on this healthcare compact, and if you go to healthcarecompact.org, you'll learn more about it. And what it is interstate compacts have been around for a long time. We've got about 200 of them in existence right now, and we want to build a regulatory shield around the states to protect them from federal regulation of healthcare. And the states that pass this compact, it's basically just a contract between states, pass the compact, their governors sign it. We do have to get congressional approval because it will impose on federal authority Obamacare. But we see it as an extremely great political tool because we can get politicians to say one way, do you support states having the right to regulate their own health care or do you not? And that way we can primary them and have something to run against them on. But check it out. The compact is on there. Some FAQs are on there. We've passed it through both houses in Georgia already. We've passed it through one chamber in Arizona, Montana. We've got it almost done in Tennessee, Missouri. Washington actually has it introduced. So check it out. It's awesome. We're also, check out teapartysunshine.org. We're very much trying to move forward the government transparency movement, and not in the way that leftists do, because leftists think that transparency is you being transparent with how you spend your money, and we tend to think that transparency means the government should be transparent with how they spend your money. So there's a difference. And so there's that. Check out teapartypatriots.org. We have a whole bunch of other stuff coming up. We're fighting the continuing revolution because we think that the Republicans need to stand firm and not give away anymore on these continuing resolutions. Because, I know I have to hurry, but I have to say this one last thing. Okay, because think about it like this. If we had a penny for every $1 billion that we're in debt, and I'm not even talking unfunded pensions and other liabilities like Medicare and stuff like that. I'm talking about just the debt and the deficit currently. That amounts to about 15,800 pennies, each penny $1 billion. The Democrats wanted to cut for the rest of the fiscal year like 4.5 pennies out, okay? But the Republicans only want to cut 61. 61 pennies out of 15,800 pennies. I know that they want to fight for the 2012 budget, and that's going to be a huge fight they're going to have on their hands. But this is so serious that we have to fight every step that we can with the CRs, with the debt ceiling increase, and with the 2012 budget. I want them to take it so seriously that they fight on every single front and every single battle that they can. So check out teapartypatriots.org. You'll find all that information there. And don't forget, these elections in 2012 are going to be so important, so please do everything that you can. And now I can answer any questions. Or comments. And while we're waiting for people to raise their hand, I'm going to say one more thing. Okay, your movie, Not Evil, Just Wrong, I have to tell you, there's a line from it that I use all the time that, to me, sums everything up about the leftists. It's when Gillian Anderson, when you guys asked her, so how did you had to fly to get here to this conference or whatever, so what about that? I thought that was really bad for the planet. And she says, sometimes some people have to fly. And that, to me, is, in a nutshell, every single elitist. It's the hypocrite videos that you do. It's everything that they think. Well, sometimes some people have to fly. I use it all the time now. So thanks.
I'm sorry, I don't want to hog up the question session here, but I want to ask you that when they were talking about the debt ceiling in Congress and in the Senate, Senator Rand Paul was the only person I remember which put ahead he said we need $500 billion in cuts.
Yep.
There was not a single Democrat, forget the Democrats, the Republicans were reticent.
Yeah.
And they were talking about $60 billion and patting themselves on the back.
When they pledged $100 billion as well.
This is preposterous. You know, I mean, you can't do that. We can't get rid of a $15 trillion debt when you have these mounting debt ceilings. You're printing money left, right, and center. The dollar is falling. The euro is going up. I don't know where it's going, but it's going somewhere. And the yuan is going to be soon on the world market.
Yeah.
As I mean, we have to think about this.
And we as constituents and citizens, we have to support. We have to give the backbone. I honestly believe in the Obamacare fight that the Republicans would not have stood as strong if it hadn't have been for us rallying and supporting them and giving them that backbone. And we have to do the same thing with this debt issue and with the deficit and all of this. Because they don't have the guts to do it. They are so scared. They're so scared that they're going to get blamed for it. And I know they have a lot of enemies in the media and everything. And it is harder for the Republican Party to get their message out. I understand that, but we have to be there to show them this is serious stuff. And it should be $500 billion of cuts. It really should.
My question to you is: I think young leaders like yourself can hold people like senators and congressmen, Republican congressmen and senators responsible, and put the pressure on them. I mean, seriously, hold their feet to the fire.
Exactly.
We have to do that within the next 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
Thanks.
Kelly, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.